Friendly's looking forward to joining with Sheena this Sunday for a first ever joint summer picnic, 21st from 4:30 to 7:30 at Washington Park.
Yeah, I think that'll be great. You guys are going, I hope we'll have a crowd, or maybe I shouldn't hope that. I think you'll have a crowd either way.
We hope so. Ready Friendly's going to have a booth. Eugene MCOM's going to have a booth, and CERT's going to have a booth. So we, and I'm not sure if what Sheena's got going, but we're going, welcoming any clipboard to sign up their people interested in ePrep at our Ready Friendly booth as well. And our radio coordinator just joined. Hello, Lena.
Yeah, I'm curious, what is Lena HD? What does HD stand for?
Her name.
Oh, oh yeah, that's her name.
It's hard to get it all in.
I thought it was a technical thing, like high
Yeah.
definition.
Oh, she's high def, all right. In the best way.
Good, good.
Yeah. It took me a moment too, despite other emails and stuff. I should go off video and show myself, I guess.
Yay.
That's it for now.
Okay.
Back to the cave.
Okay. As far as the agenda goes for tonight, I thought it would be good for us to talk to each other a little bit, rather than have a program that we couldn't find one. So, you know, it's kind of default. But I guess my interest is in, I keep hearing from the different neighborhood association preparedness committees that they would like to get more people involved. And I don't know if they're talking about getting more people involved in their committee or just getting more people from the neighborhood involved. And I was thinking about, it would be nice to somehow publicize our efforts and get more people prepared. What do you all think?
Full agreement.
I had some remarks. You had me down to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Don put up the good words there, goals, mission, those sort of things. ENPN had made up a list in the beginning of a variety of things it could do, and we've pretty much gone with the education one. The other one tasks were more related to network, you know, maintaining information, bulletin board type of things. But although we do have the Facebook, which is a place for meeting announcements, most of the work that we've done has been education, you know, to prepare you better to do your work. What is your work and where do you want to go? And that's, so how should we adjust ENPN to that? Are you focusing on teams of people who are pretty active, like the ones who were interviewed on Think Out Loud today on OPB from Portland's net? Those people, it's based on a CERT training, 32 hours. It's kind of a significant commitment. People work together repeatedly, as did the ones in Nesquim that we had as guests at an earlier meeting, the Emergency Volunteer Corps there. So you kind of form a club of people that you work with, and that's sort of part of the appeal. The other approach that has been taken is less involvement, to kind of check in with people and give them some benefit of being prepared, the peace of mind, but not engage them on a monthly basis, you know, have a training or information that is taken seriously. That's the idea of the Map Your Neighborhood program I worked on 10 years ago. This is more than just a handout of literature. It's something you worked on. But once you did it, hopefully you'll stay in touch somewhat, but it's not required. I got this, I noticed this thing in the mail here. This is a handout that's trimmed right down to the minimum. Here, tornado. What do you do in a thunderstorm? And it actually summarizes pretty well. It doesn't mystify you like you got to do a whole bunch. You can look at, 4 items. This is actually the Operation Blessing from the faith-based organization. They've done quite a bit. I've seen some others on TV, the Samaritan's Purse. So they kind of engage people. Some are very engaged, but they're striving to reach out to lots of people. And a lot of us have had that aspiration. But on the other hand, it seems like an overwhelming task. If you reach 100 people, 20 of them decide to make an emergency kit. Hey, only 5,000 left to go in your neighborhood. So it can be a little discouraging. So, that's kind of, if we're trying to see what ENPN can do, which is us, but those of us who are mostly trying to hold this network together, where are you now? Where would you like to be? And what kind of focus is working best for you? Is it the sort of, let's get our team together, work together, keep that esprit de corps? Or are we going to be satisfied just knowing that we helped people in a less intensive way, but, got them to go through their routine? They're better campers, and they'll be better when the earthquake comes, and they know what to listen for as far as wildfires or storms. One other thing I wanted to mention that I am interested in seeing if there's interest in is, besides education, we could get publicity as ENPN right now, I believe, by speaking out on some issues that are being overlooked in the public sector and government sector. It's my understanding that some measures to make homes more resilient to wildfires were dropped because of political pressure. It appears to me that we don't have much educational program at the state level. I'm going to this weekend visit the state of California's traveling exhibit on earthquakes, such as they have in Japan, down in Humboldt County. I don't think Oregon's really got much of that, or it's not on the rise and could use some citizen advocacy. So I hear from some of the professional people who would like to see it bumped up. So that's, besides education, ENPN could try to get publicity, but we could also do some of the other things that were on our list, such as, networking and giving technical assistance. So that's my spiel.
Thank you, Randy. That was great. Good ideas, all those. Yeah, I put down goals, and sometimes when I see that word, I'm like, oh God, we got to go through this again. But my thought here is, to refocus on what our real purpose is. And I think that's to prepare our neighbors and how to best do that. Education is certainly one. Advocacy, that's not my cup of tea. I'm not big in politics, but I certainly appreciate those who are and try to get things done that way. What else is there? What other approaches are there to our goals? And which ones work the best? So open the floor. Who would like to talk?
Maybe we should require people to talk, like to go around.
All right, you go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I already did mine. How about Matt? He's next to me, mine on the screen, my screen.
Okay.
Where are you at, and where would you like to be going, and what help could you use?
It's hard to say. Dang, hard to say. I feel like I've been out of the loop for some time now. I would like to see more WinLink training, particularly with packet radio, because that's what I'm familiar with. It is not the least expensive option. It is not the most efficient option, but it is much more reliable in an emergency situation than is, say, the mesh networking, because the mesh networking has a very much a line of sight kind of signal, and if there's any obstructions, you may not be able to get from here to there. And packet is much better at that in the VHF range down where it's like 140, 150-ish megahertz, and that's much more penetrative than is the other signals. The other thing I wanted to see was establishment of 4 district hubs with proper equipment and people to know how to use it. There was some discussion over here at the new Eugene High School that's being built, the North Eugene High School. There was some talk about maybe having that as a hub because it's been up to earthquake code, and we do want to get more people, young people, involved in the ham radio adventures and get them trained up. So I don't know what happened there. Like I said, I haven't been in the loop with other people, haven't been talking with other people, but I'd very much like to see that happen. I heard there was a budget issue and no one has any money to make any grant proposals right now. So all we have is plans and no real equipment or no real training. So that's where we are.
Okay, thank you.
Don, excuse
Yeah.
me. Some people joined after the initial introductions. Maybe as each person talks, they could reintroduce themselves. I believe Matt's from the River Road neighborhood.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Randy, who's next?
Well, just below Matt and my screen is Thea. So
Uh-oh.
Thea,
Well,
what
I'm
do you
next.
think? Team
I'm
building or mass outreach?
I'm next to you, not below you.
What's on your plate? What do you feel would be most successful and satisfying to be doing in the week ahead and 1 year from now?
Personally, individually, team-wise, neighborhood-wise, or city-wise, or ENPN?
For your neighborhood, do you think that the interest would be greatest in having a group of people that's not enormous, but 5 to 20 people that meets periodically? Or at the end of a year, would you be happy saying, well, I knocked on 200 doors and a lot of people sounded like they were going to do something?
Friendly area does have 5 or 6 people that meet monthly in 2 different meetings, the Ready ePrep meeting and also the Radio Ready meeting, different ones. We continue to urge 50 other participants to come to our meetings and help join the planning sessions, but we've been failing to stress that enough to make them available to them and let them come on in. And we're trying to beef up our backups for our key tactical positions, speaking of radio again. So we're hoping to get more alternates and backups and cross training involved. We actually had to go dark the last 2 months for our second Sunday exercises due to key personnel being off on other adventures with radios. So we're looking forward to getting started again in September for our second Sunday exercises. But our main push is probably going to be try to morph our Map Your Neighborhood groups into more generalized B2 weeks ready format following the examples being set by Washington and Oregon emergency management programs. As far as getting, individuals involved, it's one of our most successful members calls it nudging. She personally nudges people, reaches out and does personal contact with them through email or whatever. And I admire that. I'm not good at it myself. I don't telephone people or or solicit very much personal contact, but she's been very, very instrumental, as were others before her and with her, and getting the Map Your Neighborhood groups involved and built up. So I may have more to add later. That's kind of where I see things right now with us.
Lena, you're next on my screen. You got a comment? Comments?
Oh, I can probably come up with something. I'm Lena. I'm in the friendly area neighborhood. I work a lot with the a Radio Ready team and participate in the Ready Friendly, which is our emergency preparedness. And, you know, to tag on what Thea said, you know, I'm looking forward to the picnic that we're having this Sunday. That usually is a pretty good turnout. That's one of the ways that we can get people to engage a little bit, try to get them interested. We had a goal at one point of having 100 Map Your Neighborhood groups, 10 for each of our zones. And I think we have like maybe 35 or so, but with COVID, a lot of that kind of fell apart. We used to have like a monthly skill building. And that kind of got bogged down in, we were trying to do like write our mission statement and a whole bunch of work by committee. Like that was really challenging, and that kind of like burned a lot of people out. But hopefully, I don't know, I think doing the small groups is good, but like somebody said, the Map Your Neighborhoods is like, once you get that started, I'm a Map Your Neighborhood group leader, and I haven't met with my street for a couple years. I mean, we see each other on the street, but we don't do a whole lot with it. I like what I think of with ENPN is like having that place for neighborhoods that are wanting to get started and people to share what's working, what's not working, being that resource and kind of combining efforts, or, you know, we can tag on with each other or provide training. And the education part of it is really big. So we're not every neighborhood's having to reinvent the wheel, that we can kind of all work together and with training and different opportunities. That's helpful. And that's all I can think of right now.
Okay.
But there's probably more.
So Elizabeth, I see your face. You have a comment about what kind of involvement would make you happy to see or be part of?
Sure. Well, we've been going just for about a year now, just started out pretty small. We have 5 people up at the Highlands community that are residents and owners. And so not just, we've been very busy having wonderful, generous consultants come out, like, you know, John Q I can't pronounce your last name, I apologize. I wonder if it's the same person. Did a training online with our group, and also Thomas Price and Carlos Barrera, and we're just working. And we have radios. We'd like to have some more radio training, and Tyler is actually with our group, and he's licensed, and I think you must know him, somebody. Tyler? Yeah, you do. Okay.
Yes, we do.
So we're really, you know, energized and excited. You know, we have about 124 units up here. That's a lot of citizens up in the hills in one small area. So, I think our intention, just like joining this meeting, Tyler directed me here that, you know, to make connections in the community, share information, and collaborate, get information, you know, again, of course, how do we get together? How do we inform other people in our community without overburdening them or have rules or something like that, but just share information and to be ready. We've been doing that some, but we want to do it some more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm halfway through the CERT training. Another person's CERT trained, and other people in our work group are interested in that as well. So hopefully.
And just to be more specific, you're in a homeowner association within a particular neighborhood?
Yes, it's the Highlands. It's up in South Eugene up Willamette Street,
Oh, okay.
where there's like, and we're,
Are you in Brayburn?
oh, it's way past Brayburn. It's more like, yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the Sheena neighborhood, Southwest Hills?
yes.
I
Mhm,
see.
It's up past the cemeteries, isn't it?
yes. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Lovely neighborhood, 124 units. Do you know about how many residents? This is Thea asking.
Well, I'm just imagining, I would say possibly 225, 250. So, you know, it's real diverse age groups. And I would say close to half are renters and close to half are owners. So we just want to be very inclusive of residents. So that's why not just the owners or the board that governs just the members are only owners. We want it to be all of us together. So
Am I correct? There's only one real egress, although there may be a fire gate in the back.
yes, there is one egress. The fire gate is, it's not really a fire gate. It's just this old little road that goes into another road that a lot of people will be taking off into town from. I forget the name of it, but it's a well-traveled road.
I applaud all your efforts to get people prepared and ready and alert.
Thank you.
John Q, your comments on what's your current things, what do you see going on around you? And
Oh,
where would you like it to be a year from now? And how could ENPN help get it there?
well, yeah, just wanted to praise Elizabeth and the folks up there at Highlands. They're doing a great job. They're really well organized. When we met with them, David Monk determined that I think they had assigned different people to each complex. So there was like one, sort of like a block captain really for each of the buildings. And what a great plan. And they were working on putting up flags to indicate red flag warning days. So just all kinds of really, really great ideas. And that's what we found, you know, when we started talking to the other neighborhoods. Lynn in Bethel came up with the idea of identifying the evacuation zones with a name of the park that was in that zone. So it's not a meaningless random number, you know, so some landmark within that zone. Everybody's contributed in different ways, and there've just been a lot of ideas. You know, I think we've all recognized that the Map Your Neighborhood program is a great start, and we need something after that to sustain those groups. I attend a lot of the city's public meetings, and there's been a guy, Daniel Wilson, with the Active Transportation Group, and he's really interested in organizing an exercise that uses cargo bikes. So like a day 4 exercise after the earthquake, this would be people on cargo bikes toting medical supplies and water on their bikes throughout the city to different points. And I guess they've been doing an exercise like this up in Portland for a while, and they had been doing it in Eugene, but it lapsed. So he's trying to get it going again this fall, and it'd be great to coordinate with him. The big, sort of the big picture that we came up with in talking with everybody is to have, you know, work with Andy Davis and the CERTs on their annual exercise they do around the Great Shakeout, the Great Oregon Shakeout, and just keep building that year by year. So they've started out focusing on the communication and practicing the communication, and they're slowly working in street patrols. So what Andy is encouraging is that each neighborhood or area come up with volunteers who will do like a door-to-door part of the exercise, and then relay that to their local neighborhood communicators. And I think over time, this is something that we can build out. So we were brainstorming and put together a grant proposal that would focus on this big annual exercise, but sort of build around it. So one big exercise citywide in the fall where everybody gets to play at whatever capability they're at. If they only have radio people, great. If they have radio and map your neighborhood, incorporate that. If they also have the cargo bike people, find a way to work them in, and we'll get these big exercises. And then what we were thinking was in the spring, maybe we could do a training, something before the big exercise, something for our neighborhood only or our small groups only. And then of course, always have map your neighborhood going on, or these tabletop exercises, which sort of take the map your neighborhood groups and give them a concrete disaster scenario to talk about how they might help one another and respond. And then I think Matt pointed out, the grant situation. It's always tough. There's so many people in our area who have greater needs, food, lodging. We're trying to come up with a way to make our efforts sustainable. And one experiment we're trying now and we're launching is called the Time Bank. And that's something that we learned about from Bianca Bell with Lane County Emergency Management. They had really profound success. They looked at people who had a time bank in New Zealand after their big earthquake, and it was like, wow, they bounced back in this little community a lot faster. What was their secret? A time bank. So we're trying that out this year, and we want to expand that over time.
You might explain clearly what a time bank is.
Sure. Time bank is a way of recording the favors we do for our neighborhood association or for one another. So people can post sort of offers to share their talents and skills, and they get a call. Some of them on the existing time bank are offering clerical skills, accounting skills, publishing, desktop publishing, all kinds of different things, massage, it's yard work. David Monk helped me with my roofing a couple years ago when we started this pilot project. And then the other day I was helping him at his rental property. We're regrouting a bathroom and putting making the tile all waterproof and stuff. So I got a couple hours back to thank him there. But the idea is right now, all the neighborhood associations have just done all the collecting of the data to say how many hours they spent over the last 18 months. Provide that to the time bank. We'll get that entered in for people who are interested. And hopefully this will organically grow over time with organizational members as well as individual members.
It's been called a barter network in previous incarnations where it wasn't connected to preparedness, but it's interesting to hear the news from New Zealand. But two people I haven't heard from yet that we haven't heard from. I got Barb Hazen and L. Lamb. Could we get the comment from one of you at a time? Barb, are you okay? Let's hear from Ms. Lamb.
Yeah, it's Lucy Bambury. I don't know why it got shortened in my profile, but I noticed Barb had something in chat that she doesn't have audio video capacity, but she did put a message in chat that was interesting. So if you check your chat, I thought her suggestion was a good idea. But I live in the southeast in Sen, southeast neighborhood, and David Hazen and Barb Hazen, but they had a good idea in our smaller neighborhood, which is, well, it's kind of encompasses Shadowwood Park, which is off of 43rd, off of Dillard, off of East Amazon. But they had a good idea of wanting people to volunteer to be not a block captain as such, but maybe someone who, like at Highlands, someone who would be willing to check on people in the different cul-de-sacs. I live at the end cul-de-sac at the end of Barber, going up the hill from Shadowwood Park. And we've got about 10 houses. And I said, I'd be willing to, I'm home retired, I'm home most of the day. And so I'd be willing in an emergency or, another snowmageddon, to just make sure that everybody's accounted for. And if they need help, kind of pass the word to the other neighbors, because we do watch out for each other on the cul-de-sac, which is good. So I thought that was a good idea. Have someone in each cul-de-sac or each dead end kind of act as a go-between between David and the rest of the neighbors.
Thank you. Barb said that what she appreciates is the smaller groups that have taken stock of the resources. And that's kind of the map your neighborhood approach, which is a formalized training, not lengthy, like it's just a couple hours. But she said during Snowmageddon, it was good to know who had a chainsaw and such. I wanted to raise an issue that I think John, it prompted me thinking about it. Before the time bank, it was about, drills and such. There was in the discussion on today's Think Out Loud, and that's not the only thing that's been in the news in the last week on preparedness. This is a hot topic. But on today's discussion, interviewing the people in Portland, the host, I think it's Dave Miller, he asked these two people, says, well, you go to these drills, you practice what you'll do after a disaster, as opposed to some of the other things where we kind of get prepared now and we have our stuff, but we don't necessarily have the whole scenario laid out, how we'll go door to door and all that in detail. He says, don't you get tired when nothing happens? You went to all that work. Wouldn't it be more satisfying if you actually did something out of it? And that is when we spend time on preparing for being part of the response to an incident, that is kind of an issue, and it draws a certain group of people. And the other approach is the low-key approach is, get your stuff together, go camping, pretend you had to go camping in a hurry, have your cook stove, have all those things ready all the time, have your household ready, and enjoy the idea that you are not going to be as in dire straits as other people would. So potentially the idea then is you could reach many more people that way, and perhaps then what would bring more people to the teams of people who are more committed to the exciting work of drilling with your team, the camaraderie, and making disaster response more effective in the local area. So something to think about. Preparation in a general way, response after an incident. The Pathfinder exercise was a response activity. Most of the CERT activity is. Map your neighborhood. It takes the inventory, and it does say something you do. You go around and check in on everybody. You turn off the gas, but it doesn't really predict the larger picture. Let me mention some of the things that I said are in the news. Like on today's news, Klamath Falls on KLCC has organized preparedness for people with disabilities. People recognize still, and I think things like the war in Ukraine, spotlight. Remember, those of us who are fully abled, we may feel like we're fairly prepared. There's a whole bunch of people who can't leave their town and so on, when they require checking in. And so that was the story out of Klamath Falls. The national story is about the discovery of weather pattern called an atmospheric river. The New York Times put this in 3 days ago. It's being picked up by other national news things, and it predicts that a huge amount of rainfall could come during the winter, trigger early snow melts, drop as more precipitation than the dams in the state of California, at least, are designed to hold, although ours in Oregon are not of infinite capacity. So that threatens a flood. Kind of a El Nino on steroids is a new scientific finding. And then the other issue that suggests to me that it might be a time to get into the public is into the eye of into the media coverage, because journalists know this is important, is this wildfire risk map. We're still having fires, okay? They didn't go away that one year. Even though the east wind fire, the extreme east wind fire that outside of Southern Oregon burned down rural communities, but in Southern Oregon did burn down 2,000 houses of people in the cities. Those are relatively rare, but there's still an unpredictable situation with climate change. And there's a lack of leadership about how to respond to this. If you notice, everybody is trying to make sure the public has to do as little as possible to respond to the risk information.
Is backward.
They're trying to make it as easy as possible to build your house, just like it was before with that burn down up the McKenzie or the San Am, with this least trouble, to make sure you don't have to pay more for making risky choices or failing to do things to your house. Nobody is really trying to steer the public process, to improve things. This would be like the when we first discovered the Cascadia earthquake was real. If no one ever spoke up for strengthening the building code. And here we are going to increase the density of buildings, flammable buildings in neighborhoods in the cities through the middle housing and the permitting duplexes and quadruplexes and so on. And there's no fire safety improvements there, even though it is fairly rare. It's just as important as earthquake enhancements to the building code. So I think you don't have to be a complete news junkie like me to notice that the journalists and the public are still interested in the issue, and this could be a good time for all of us. Thea, you had your hand up.
Actually, I was a thumbs up for what you were saying.
Oh, okay.
Yes, everything you brought up, I agree with. I do want to say that I kind of gave up tilting at windmills and regionally, nationally on bigger causes decades ago, and I'm leaning more towards one-on-one approaches. Small is beautiful. Lucy's example of just getting somebody in a cul-de-sac, going even smaller than Map Your Neighborhood, getting just your nearest neighbors that are invisible to link up by text or intention, and also to be a neighborhood watch. I'm an advocate of using public safety, theft, all that as a way to hook in younger people into emergency readiness as well. To me, that's as equally as important as all those people that have energy to do the political lobbying and work on the larger scale. Obviously, the atmospheric rivers are coming. They've been hitting Europe hard this 10 inches of rain, et cetera, already this month, and they're going to come to us. And what happens to our dams, we don't know. John Q is helping Friendly prepare a tabletop exercise for a potential dam inundation throughout Eugene. That would actually go all the way to Salem and Portland. Should one or more dams fail up the Willamette. We're hoping to hold that exercise October 20th. That's when it's planned, on the day of the Great Shakeout, that evening for our Friendly Area General Membership meeting. And we will let everybody know that they can come in and participate in that as well. And I really credit John and Dave Monk for starting these tabletop exercises and inspiring us to figure out how we can look at different threats and risks and look at how we might prepare in our homes and help our neighborhoods and neighbors be aware that there are hazards out there that our emergency managers aren't even really letting us know about that are potentials. It's a possibility. So without wanting to frighten people, you know, floods could come at any time from any area. So I like the one-on-one, the small group approach. That's my spiel. Thank you.
I got a question to put out to people. What do you think would bring people into activity? I got three, for examples. Big news in the news media, your television news, you know, read it about it in the New York Times. OPB, you know, says, look, this disaster happened. That's one thing. Another thing is just having been through an experience like that personally, like you were in California or someplace where they had a wildfire, an earthquake, you never forgot it, or Boulder, Colorado. And then you find that when somebody says, hey, we got a group to help out in case something like that happens here, that's another possible reason you might become involved. Or just that you heard about it from a neighbor or somebody, you know, like, hey, I went to a Map Your Neighborhood meeting. It was pretty cool. We found out what we have in common, you know, as far as resources, what we do. So those are three things. And I'd like to hear from some people, what do you think would be most likely to bring new people to join the work you're doing? Nat, what about you?
Well, I mentioned the high school already, right? I would be willing to do some personal hands-on instruction there if they had a dedicated room for it.
Why would they want to? Why would they want? Of the reasons, the method, the prompting, the stimulus. What do you think would be most likely to draw people in? That they?
Yeah, that's a darn good question.
Yeah.
I'm old enough that I don't know.
Answer.
I'm old enough that I don't really understand the high school generation anymore. So, yeah, that's a tough question. What would bring them?
When I mention media, I'm also saying that I think it's a time when anybody right now who's got something to say could get into the media in the middle of these stories. Like if you went to a hearing or put out a press release, say, yes, you should pay more on your insurance. Whoa, you know, the journalists love that, to have the pro and con, but actually you should. It's already come up, you know, the people who build their fancy houses on the seashore and the federal government insures them and washes away once. Oh, here's all the money you need to rebuild it again. So you can get in the news on that. But I mean, the people who respond to that just take a note of it and tell themselves to move elsewhere, or, you know, not to do, or would they be likely to join in and go to a meeting or write a letter? So that's one thing, the mass media and personal contact. I think that's what Thea is saying. Is that working? We had a lot of people Map Your Neighborhood groups. Other people would hear about it and say, we want one. They found it a good program, and they word of mouth. Somebody must want to comment on this topic.
One of the things I heard mentioned was sharing resources or letting people know what you may have. And that's one of the hindrances to Map Your Neighborhood, is people feel that they have to declare how many generators they have in their garage or whatever. And that's really not true. That's totally optional. And some of that information just goes to the people involved. But that's also an aspect of the time bank. And one of the ways it actually started here in Eugene was letting people know you could list things. I listed, you know, step ladders and actually, you know, things that I might be willing to loan out. Other things I didn't want to loan out, I didn't mention. But I haven't updated them, but that's another way that it can be, you can let people know what skills and what resources you have if you're willing to share that information. And there are ways to protect it within just a few areas, or it doesn't have to be widely spread out there. But it's, yeah. The map your neighborhood format we hear is moving towards be 2 weeks ready to be more universal and easier to plug into. So how that comes out through Oregon, we don't know yet. But we in Friendly still intend to support and promote our Map Your Neighborhood groups, as well as, I hope, moving towards adding neighborhood watch groups. There, if you follow social media in Eugene, there seems to be a growing desire to have citizen patrols to prevent all this neighborhood theft. And that is not what Neighborhood Watch promotes here in Eugene. The EPD does not support citizen patrols, and we're not advocating them as far as taking any action other than maybe just patrolling and then reporting. Definitely no, militia or
Vigilantism. Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
Hard.
Right, vigilantism, that's not it, but there's a lot to be said for feeling secure in your home on an everyday basis and in your property, as well as during a more recognized emergency. When things are taken off your land or out of your car, it's a very very strange violation, and it's happening all the time, every night around here. Thank you.
Nextdoor is actually facilitating that. I guess just they're not a set program recommendation, but I mean, people are sharing their observations the same as they might have in a more limited way. It's structured for that. Question is it making the community safer? Because of Nextdoor's, I mean, there are other things that they do. I got this to give away. I got this for sale. Can somebody help so-and-so? But there's an awful lot of that Nextdoor postings are, hey, we saw some people there that I just don't know. Does anybody know them? You know, are they criminals, or are they just people that are doing some soliciting? And so it actually is functioning like a non-militia type of citizen watch, a neighborhood watch. Do you feel safer because of that activity? And so a similar thing could be done by ENPN of a kind of sharing of just like reports, say, what do you do for personal preparedness in your house? What's your tip? And just this kind of a sharing of on a limited thing, little bits of being prepared in your household or with your neighbors. Anybody have a response to how Nextdoor functions? Is it just kind of a entertainment, or do you actually feel safer that there'd be less crime, or you'd be safer if there is crime? Is everybody on Nextdoor?
No.
I wanted to say that we have found it very helpful as a way to reach people for announcements of our events and activities and things of concern. I post there quite frequently when we have something going on. And sometimes some of our events have indicated they've heard about it mostly through Nextdoor. There's also a chance to have private groups, people that are in a Map Your Neighborhood or an area who want to just do their own thing and just have messages between each other and have form a private group with nobody else knowing that. But yeah, there's a concern about posting all the pictures of suspects, which cameras really don't capture. They got a ball cap on, they got a mask, and who knows who they are. It's been really hard to get any real success of apprehension from thieves through Nextdoor postings or Neighbors postings. Or Neighbors is an app from the Ring Security Service. That's another one that's out there. But I like Nextdoor. You can tailor it to just your neighborhood or all 16 or 23 others, and yeah, it's just a matter of what you want to monitor and watch and follow.
Lena, were you gonna?
Oh, yeah, I do appreciate Nextdoor for some things. I like having an idea of what kind of crimes are going on and where they're at, just for general awareness. There's sometimes I think people are a little overly suspicious of anybody that walks by, but I do think that's a little bit helpful. But like Thea said, we use it too to get messages out for invitations to different events we're having, and we reach a lot of people that way. There's a lot of people on there and I think that's helpful. But I have Ring cameras too, and so I get those notifications, and some of those are pretty good. And I've seen some apprehensions. But just for situational awareness, for me, I like the crime statistics around me and what's happening.
Do you think Nextdoor would ever be useful during an incident itself that did not cut off your computer access and power?
I think it would be widely used for that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where a lot of times like people hear something,
Yeah,
and they'll say, what's happening there? There's a lot of police activity. There's like, I just heard, is that fireworks? Is that gunshots?
right.
And people can respond. And so you're getting different perspectives. And if that service was available, I think it is a way that people would gather information and, figure out where to go, what direction to go, what's happening, if there's resources. I think it would be utilized.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking of, is like, you don't have to try calling the police to see what they'll say. Why are there 10 police cars going down the street? What's going on? And so it is limited to when you have the power and some sort of connection. It wouldn't work in all disaster situations, but let's say like in the Marshall fire in Boulder, Colorado, where this fire starts and it could potentially affect a whole big area, or like the Almeida fire.
Yeah.
Would it be worthy for us, the neighborhood-based preparedness network and the neighborhood groups, to assign some official status or encourage this to say, okay, your job in a situation like that, like flood, fire, earthquake without everybody being out of power, is to go on Nextdoor and say, let's share what we know, and information from radio networks. Well, I mean, the radio networks is good because it is resilient. It's the amateur radio is supposed to function regardless, but they might be functioning at a time when other networks are not getting the full news. As you know, the police have a habit of not saying too much, or they can only get a certain detail to a certain amount and say, oh, that whole part of the county's got to evacuate, but it would be, do you think that's potentially that we should formally make it a priority to have a presence on Nextdoor interactive? Like right now on Facebook, and I do want the Facebook moderators and John Q and Tia, I want to get together some editorial. We're doing pretty good, but that is mostly just an educational outlet. It doesn't function the way Twitter and this Nextdoor social media works. But we could intervene as social media people with disaster news. Would that appeal to anybody?
I do know that one thing that Facebook is good for is during a disaster, because it reaches people, it reaches your friends and family and contacts out of the area.
Yeah,
it's really good for that. And I've had my relatives be in areas where something big has happened, and the ability to mark yourself safe during a disaster is really helpful for people like your friends and relatives outside of the area. And so there's less people trying to call you and tying up lines that way. I think Facebook's Facebook's good for that, but that also is internet-based. One of the things we use as a backup, we use Slack, which is a texting app for our radio backup for communication. That's where I think most of our radio operators are signed up to that, and we use it. It's very limited. We don't use it for anything other than very brief announcements, or when we're on the radio on the air, if people can't hear, like, or if we're changing channels or frequencies, we can post that on there, and it's a way to communicate or to notify people to turn on their radios to a certain frequency or channel.
Well, I know of Slack as a business collaboration software that I found was a little too comprehensive, and I didn't find it as friendly in the organization that was using it. But certainly for a specific purpose.
That's why we tried to keep it super, super simple.
Yeah.
And if you turn on, like for me, that's the only thing I have on there is I have like a radio work group, and I only have like 2 work groups on there. And we don't limit it. We don't let people do chit chat, just that run on anything. It's just very brief, like announcements and backup communication.
Elizabeth, you got a hand up.
Okay. I know that Facebook was very instrumental in the post the fire, the Mackenzie Blue River area, that there was an excellent communication between residents and sharing of resources or asking about people or concerns, and it was amazing. I living here, that's where I tapped into to see a lot of what was going on.
And the same with other fires in California and other places. The grassroots organization came about through Facebook sites. That one I would belong to in Ojai, I was monitoring from Eugene, got nationwide coverage for the work that they were able to do to organize themselves to be provide their own relief when they were cut off and afterwards. And I don't know about having a designated person. I think it may be better to just say, if people are willing, this is a possibility that they might do, but we really have to be careful of spreading disinformation. It can be very easy to do that from listening to a scanner or ham radio, other radio, or Twitter. When I got that alert the other night for shelter in place, EPD wants you to, there's a SWAT activity on Balboa. It was like, 9, 10 o'clock at night. I was already asleep actually. And I was thinking, let's see, Malibu's the next street over. Is Balboa over there? I couldn't remember that it was actually in North Kinsey off a, Crescent. And that was very alarming to get that alert. Yeah. And
that's a long way from where you are, right?
It is, yeah.
It's not relevant to you.
I did a search and it was over 3 miles or 5 miles by Beltline, et cetera. So other people, Nancy Yeaman said she got it as well in South Hills. I put a post on Nextdoor saying, who else got this? Is that strange? Because my car hadn't been near Crescent in a long time. So, I know they're tweaking their alert system and that's really interesting. But Nextdoor was, that's where I went first to find out, what's happening on Balboa. And there was nothing yet. There was nothing on the police side and nothing on Scanner, of course, because police is encrypted. EMS was there eventually, but that took a while, and it lasted 5 hours, and it was very scary for those residents up there, but ended peacefully with an apprehension.
The point of designating somebody as affiliated with a disaster preparedness committee is that person would ask the questions like you're asking. Does this affect everybody that it's going to be communicated to? Are we saying clearly? Are we going to do a better job than the big the higher agencies that have such a big task in front of them? I think that we have an interest in this area of social media, and so I'm wondering, would it be good for the 2 or 3 most interested people to sort of survey the opportunities for using Nextdoor or Facebook as an actual response tool during an incident. A little bit different than the current Facebook page we have, which is supposed to be a precursor to a website and a full educational communication system. The other thing is that I'm still hot that it's a great time for some public activity that gets some press coverage. I haven't heard anybody else to say whether they're interested. Are there any other people that want to form a committee of 2 or 3 with me on that topic? So
you keep mentioning Facebook. There is another app that's well worth mentioning. It's called Emergency by the American Red Cross. That lists potential threats in your area, potential threats that might exist in your in the area of people you care about, your contacts, and offers you a means to message them quickly and easily to let them know you're okay or that they're okay. It's an excellent app. Emergency by American Red Cross.
well, that would be something that the participants would access as a resource to communicate that information in addition to everything else. Because I've never heard of it before. So therefore, I don't think it's quite in the same ballpark as Nextdoor, Facebook, I suppose Twitter, although I don't know which one, but at least there's 2 that are known to operate among a much wider audience at a neighborhood level. Good coverage. We have more people on Nextdoor in my neighborhood that are on our email list for the neighborhood association. I got 200 people on my list, and there's 400 people on Nextdoor. So the coverage and topic. Lena.
Yeah, I have a comment on some of the apps. I have the emergency app, and I have Flash Alert, and I have My Alerts, and I have one that my work uses. And what I find on the emergency app is that I have it set up for my location. I have it set up for the 2 locations my parents are at. And it's a really broad coverage. I've got alerts going off all the time. And so it may be like red flag warnings or heat warnings or just different things that it might be like Portland or Salem, or a lot of times it covers a really broad area. And I find that for my parents' location too. I mean, they're alerts for places that are, 100, 150, 200 miles away, that they're not actually impacted.
But
So I think
so-
something more like
we-
Nextdoor's more local.
Yeah, we'd be the intermediary between that broad coverage and, between that narrow coverage. There's probably only, 10 or 20 people in your 2-mile radius that have that access, but the number of people on Nextdoor. So we're the interface between these information sources and the networks that people are already on, such as Facebook and Nextdoor in particular, because it's already geographically segmented, structured that way. Whether Twitter is used at a neighborhood level, I don't know. I think it's more at a different type of audience. But Nextdoor and Facebook are the ones that, so somebody takes that narrow audience, you're part of the narrow audience, and determines if it's useful. But most of all, the resource are the existing members of Nextdoor to say, hey, I'm from the Friendly Preparedness Committee, and we listened to this, and we got radio things, and here's what we're hearing. And we'll call your attention to so-and-so's report, and or somebody else is raising the alarm about something, but we got information, not to be a official moderator, but to speak with some authority because we have extra access. We made it a point, like you listen to that app. I know where to read, I have people saying earthquake, it's terrible, et cetera. And I know where to look to see if it's true and how to fact check the report. Is Yellowstone really going to blow up tomorrow and destroy the world? So I think I hadn't even thought of this whole concept, but it is something we could do among our activities to reach an audience that's already there, and just have some sort of I don't know. Do you want to join? Would you be interested in being on a committee with 2 or 3 other people that work the next door? And no, I mean,
I'm committed up.
yeah. Well, I read next door, but not that often. I'm not a next door junkie. And I don't get that.
I skim it.
I'm not, I read other people's Facebook stuff, but I have a friend who their activism is on Facebook, and for ideas and intellectual discussion, but that's not me. I'm one article a week and reading what other people are saying. That's enough for me. I'm more interested in making news in the ways I described, talking to a legislator, testifying at a meeting, try to get into the news. That I enjoy. And so if anybody wants to work with me on that, I would love to have a committee of 2, 3, or 4 people. But do we have enough to a focus group around the use of social media as one of our tools to reach the public? There's John has got something to say.
We kind of handle that through our neighborhood PIO. So we designated different people to be the PIO for the neighborhood association, and they handle the regular MailChimp and all the ongoing notifications. And then in an emergency, we would just keep working with them. They're pretty good. We have Jess Roshak doing next door, and Dennis Bear.
I see.
Tells us what to put on the website, and I also just wanted to volunteer. I love the advocacy idea.
Okay.
And I think there are some individuals in our area who are providing that leadership. What a debacle that the statewide wildfire risk map had to get thrown away, and all the notices to high and extreme danger zones are, they had to roll that back, and then they had to, the financial regulations people had to say, if an insurance company uses this as an excuse to raise your rates, they will face fines. So the whole thing, didn't turn out as well as we would hope. Clearly we all benefit from the state having a clear message and good information, and to rush this through and have it be in such poor quality that it had to be withdrawn. That's regrettable. But as a media person, I would love to accompany you and cover your statements when you testify and when you advocate for things. And Fusey's doing great work too. I try to follow Tim Inglesby with everything he says, and I threw in chat that they will be having a wildfire documentary as a fundraiser at the old Bijou Theater that's now called the Art Center, I believe, on East 13th. So that's coming up in a couple of weeks here, early in September. But let me know, Randy, and I'll track in. We'll put together an article.
Well, let's have a conference on some of the top issues, and there is the opportunity to raise worthy ideas right now. And political candidates can raise them. Political candidates can be posed with the question, would you favor? For example, you could go ahead right away and say, we need to make sure everybody has a Class A roof that won't catch fire, even though it's in the city and these fires only happen every 20 or 50 years. We want a good roof that's not going to light their house and then light their neighbor's house on fire. Put that in the building code, just like we do with earthquake preparedness. Well, that's radical. Well, what about something like require when a house is sold to have an inventory of the fire resistant properties of the house, just like you do with dry rot and pests? These are kind of free market solutions. these, then you could also have, instead of telling the insurance companies, don't raise anybody's rates on account of fire, you can say, make sure that everybody who has done this or that gets a break. You know, if they can get a break for bundling their insurance, why can't the state go ahead and say, anybody who's done something to demonstrably lower the risk must be accounted for? I don't know if it's in law that a person who has fewer tickets, you know, gets a better rate than the person who has many tickets. But if it isn't, it would be perfectly legitimate to require insurance companies in the field of auto insurance. Now, medical insurance, this is the whole thing, guaranteed over preconditions and so on. It's debated. But on property and casualty type of insurance, nobody's proposing the kind of incremental measures that are so reasonable. Instead, it's just, no, nobody should pay more, you know? So I think we have a lot of opportunity to raise that. Yeah, Lena.
Does anyone know if they use the new flood inundation maps for FEMA's flood insurance? I know I was not in a flood zone previously, but I have flood insurance for groundwater, and it jumped to, oh my gosh, it was like, is it almost $800 a year? It jumped significantly this year.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I was shocked.
I think you're either in the zone or out of the zone. And that is the other part of this insurance controversy. Besides, did you do what you can to lower your risk? And I'm not sure what you do about floods, although sometimes people build on stilts. But in the case of the fires and the case of what is in the flood zone, people are questioning that, and this is why we're getting such a poor response from our leaders, you know, saying no, don't hurt anybody's feelings or cost them a dime. But like the wildfire maps are only accounting for interface fires, the kind of fires that happen normally from lightning, dry conditions, and come closer to cities. They're not accounting for the extreme east wind, fire, tornadoes, you know, creating your own wind, skip the trees, go house to house and burn everything down. That's what happened in Colorado there with 1,000 houses in a day. And the risk maps that have been issued take no account of that risk at all. You look at the places where all those houses burned in Jackson County, lowest possible risk. So people have reason to question the maps as a basis for changing insurance rates. But
the flood maps too, there's like different scenarios and situations. Yeah. Like for the most part, I'm not in a flood zone.
For the most part, what does that mean?
Well, it's different. There's different layers depending on like how many dams break or how many, like what the inundation is, whether I'm underwater or not.
Yeah.
For a really huge breach, most of Eugene's under. I mean, there's a place on College Hill that'll be an island, and a place over by Friendly that'll be on island, and the rest of it's underwater. Well,
I would say it's a little less dire than that, because I have seen it.
So too, but apparently my insurance rates don't think so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're very rigid. And the point is that there are plenty of allies. The State Fire Marshal has hosted these webinars, and they're on their site. And the one that I watched was about evaluation of the fire, I believe in Santa Rosa, and the Marshall fire. And the person who spoke was from the Cooperative Extension of California. They're working with the insurance companies to figure out what policies would be best for the risk, what is causing things to be riskier, you know, the certain type of glass, a certain type in the houses, the roofing materials, so the insurance companies can adjust it and provide incentives for people to do it on their own. And I'm sure we'd have allies here in Oregon and people in government and stuff that are not elected officials, don't have any reason to blow their horn. They say, we really need you folks to do the talking here because I need to keep my job and I don't want to get in hot water with my supervisor for making my work look controversial. And they run away from the issue. Unfortunately, the politicians are running away too. But we could get them to stop and take a stand if we push them, is my hope. Thea, you're on.
As that happened with the wildfire risk map, the pushback and the taking a stand really helped. And I would suggest, or maybe Lena could post something on Nextdoor saying, anybody else have their, flood insurance go up this high, and where do you think it's coming from? If you're not able to get any answer from your carrier. The one thing going back, I had on my mind to express about social media is that I don't really see a need for another group or poster or whatever per se to be designated or activated, because there are so many useful groups available and scanner watchers and things on Twitter and on Facebook. I belong to Highway 58 Watch, 126 Watch. Those aren't the names, but you get notified of accidents within 2 minutes by crowdsourcing of that information that go by residents along the route, travelers along the route, and that it's very, very useful if you know where to go and follow those groups. So I think it would be advantageous for ENPN to publish, a list occasionally of useful sites to follow, both in different media, and suggest things like this. Pulse Point, the different highway watches, different neighborhood groups. And Twitter is really good if you follow some of the public agencies and all that. So I wanted to get that in before we ended, that I can put something like that together and keep that updated, maybe keep posting it.
Well, if you have a group of a half a dozen people that meet periodically every month or two, I would suggest just having an agenda item, social media, anything happening, are these issues getting communicated? Might we have posted something? What did you see? You don't necessarily have to load somebody up with extra work, but anything for your group. I mean, you probably deal with different modes of activity, but just to monitor the people's participation in social media. Oh, I've been doing Nextdoor. I made 3 posts about something. Oh, I do that group that you said, Highway 58 Watch, just to sort of include it. And ENPN, we should do something too for a citywide level.
Also, a year or two ago, we held a skills building seminar where we it was how to prepare your phone for emergencies, and it was all the different kinds of apps and how to get your ICE information in there, and how to get your landline or address or email address on your lock screen, and how to use your medical info where people can get to it without doing a password. And a lot of information like that was available that I've been thinking of reposting, because it was actually quite meaty and worthwhile. So there's that.
Well, it doesn't sound like we have the impetus for a specific committee at the ENPN level tonight, but with John volunteering, I'm thinking that John and I should have a conference to assess opportunities for public policy engagement and put out an announcement for anybody else that's doing so. John, if you're willing, we'll try to schedule something like that and announce such a committee.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And anybody who wants to have a little focus group on social media, if you do want to get 2 or 3 of you together to brainstorm on that specific topic, we'll put it out to the ENPN list.
One technique that journalists have used is using a small example of a human microcosm to get into the main story. And I'd suggest using Highland Oaks and Elizabeth to show what people can do in a small area to get their readiness as one example, there are other examples out there, and then you get into the main story from there. So that's just a journalism technique.
Yeah, I think you're talking about how in the State of the Union message every year, the president, who has the job of summarizing everything going on in the country, usually brings up one particular person who had one specific experience to sort of humanize all the big policy stuff. And there they are. We brought them to Washington to sit up there, and their thing is representative of, zillions of people. And so, yeah, something bad happens to a lot of people, it's a statistic, but if something happens to one person, it's a tragedy or triumph, so.
I think one of our ENPN's goals or duties may be to celebrate its pioneers and to highlight them and feature them and volunteers out there, that we can do that and through media. That is great, and John's been able to do a lot of that, so that's great. Thank you.
We have announcements on our agenda. Is there any specific event that people want to call everybody's attention to that we didn't already talk about? And the next third Thursday of September, that's still good. We'll try to have a program then of the usual educational nature. I've been wanting to see if we can get Jeff Golden, the state senator who's heading up the wildfire recovery program, but other suggestions are welcome. Third Thursday is conflicts in the past with Eugene Symphony, not in September this year. But does that conflict with any other meetings? ABC doesn't always meet on the third Thursday.
I don't know. Friendly's hoping to have their general meeting on October 20th to coincide with the great shakeout, the tabletop exercise. I really don't know about ABC, but I was wondering if perhaps Dawn could reach out to Sue Cummings, who mentioned she's got a CERT who's willing to step up and volunteer, and maybe see if he can connect her with Andy Davis or that volunteer. I would have, but she would left the meeting. I couldn't quite get to her in time to. You may have her email address.
I don't think so, but I'll check.
That sounds really exciting for JWN. I know there's a lot of energy there, and it just needs a focus.
Anybody, anything else, Don, that we should deal with this meeting?
No, I don't guess so. I always have more to cover, but that's good for the next meeting. And it's getting late, so I would suggest we wrap it up. Yeah. And I want to thank everybody for participating and suggestions that we got. I'm going to check out this Red Cross emergency app. It sounds bad, but there might be a way I could tweak it to narrow down the scope to my area. So I'll do that and let you all know. Lena?
There's another one that's called Flash Alert that's very local. And it has, actually the place I work has it for our workplace notifications. It's set up to be able to do that. And it's set up for Eugene, Springfield, Albany, and Corvallis. I don't receive very many alerts on there. And then it also has local news that'll come up and give you whatever local things happening. That's another one that's a little more narrow.
Okay.
It's actually through many states and throughout Oregon. It's very, very old, but it's been around a long time. The school districts have relied on it for snow warnings and all that. Emergency is kind of the main app of Red Cross's dozen different specific apps they have. And it's the one most recommended rather than getting the earthquake or fire or flood app. Yeah.
I I mentioned that I posted or added to Thea's post, since she beat me to it, the OPB program about net, how people could access that radio segment. But I probably should put up what opportunity there is to watch the PBS program I saw earlier this week. I recommended it. Was When Disaster Strikes, and it's a very severe hurricane in the Bahamas. It did, as far as I could tell, because I didn't know it was on. I don't think it talked about advanced risk mitigation, things to make their houses more resilient, but just what are we talking about in terms of disaster, and that whole country, or at least the parts that were worst affected. And like if you lived in Paradise, California, and it was a good documentary, and the kind of thing that I think can motivate some people to take action before we get faced with our own climate change circumstances or whatever it is that might disrupt our lives. It was a good show, and they usually run them 2 or 3 times, and a lot of times they're on a website. When Disaster Strikes, and it was this week. So.
Okay, any other final thoughts, or is it time to say goodbye? Good night.
It is.
So it looks like September 20th for the next meeting so far on our calendars.
Yeah.
Okie dokie.
All right. Good
Thank
night,
you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Matt.
September 20th. Wait a
Is
minute.
that, is that what you said? What
No.
day?
It's the
No, September 22nd.
22nd.
No,
Okay.
actually, the third Thursday is the 15th.
15th. Is the
Wow.
third Thursday.
The
Yeah, the month-
15th.
Starts on,
Yeah,
I can't find my phone. Sorry. I'll get that down though. Thank you. Good catch.
maybe we should try to plan on the 15th then.
yeah, that's the
Okay.
third Thursday.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
All right.
good night, everybody.
good
Good
night.
night.
Good night. Thank you.